stunning looks than swift.
At the cusp of the most coveted honour in cricket's history stand India and Australia, cricket's grandstand fixture, modern day cricket's best possible fixture. It's a dream final for a number of people. It is a dream come true for a number of players. Will Rohit Sharma join the ranks of Kapil Dev and MS Dhoni? Will Pat Cummins joins the elite list of Alan Border and Steve Waugh, Ricky Ponting and Michael Clarke? Well, the next few hours or the next 8 hours will decide who is going to be crowned champions of the 13th edition of the Men's World Cup. India versus Australia at the Narendra Modi Stadium, which promises now to become cricket's 8th venue to host a Men's World Cup final, and by some distance with the largest possible crowd. There is so much to build up on what is World Cup Finals Day on Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricket for Matchday, powered by Qatar Airways. The very good afternoon to Anil Kumble.
Good afternoon, Raunak.
Who 20 years on from being part of an India squad that played Australia in a final, perhaps slept a little easier over the last few days, having spent some time away from the team. But would the team have slept well the last couple of days? We can feel the buzz around the country being here in
Oh yes, yes. I think, in terms of the expectations for India to be the champions, it started much before the World Cup started. So this team would have sort of gone through that process of saying, okay, come on, this time you need to win the championship. They have done all the good work over the last 10 games, won all of those, and today is the day where they have that opportunity to go there and be the champions. So yes, the whole of India was looking forward to this day, and the team has certainly lived up to that. So it's just another opportunity and one more day, similar to how they have gone about in the last 10 games, then India should hold that cup at the end of tonight.
All right, there is an optimism around Anil Kumble, which is echoed by pretty much the sentiment across the country. And it's not just sentiment on the basis of misfound patriotism or a lack of objectivity. They've been the standout team of the tournament, shades of a 10-match winning streak that remind us of Ponting's great side in 2007. And, well, no one's come close to beating them, Tom Moody. But as we look at a team that possibly can, a team that we described in a written preview as well as the one that knows how to win these tournaments, it's in their DNA. Is Australia the closest team to beating India, and can it happen today?
Good afternoon to you both. Yeah, look, I absolutely believe Australia is probably the pick of the teams that have played in this World Cup that can compete against India. And I think more so to do with they have trod this path more often than any other team in this tournament. I think South Africa are a very good side, but they have yet to play in a final in an ICC tournament. So to say that they could have been better matched to be a better contender than Australia, I find hard to see. But there's no question India have been incredible over the past few weeks. They've dominated, they've had their setbacks, but they've managed to sort of seamlessly strengthen their side on the back of injury and misfortune.
All right, well, there is a lot to build up to, and it's been about a month and 10 days or so since India and Australia started their campaign in this tournament at Chennai, in what became a much talked about game, compelling game, but much talked about for the surface they played on. As we just have a quick look at their head-to-head though, this is a team that knows how to win World Cup cricket. It's a team that knows how to win World Cup finals. But have Australia ever seen something like this before? They've seen a packed house in 2015 at the MCG, which would have been pretty close to what we'll see at the Narendra Modi Stadium. But since the 2019 World Cup, it's still 8-5 to Australia. In knockouts though, India have fond memories, or at least Virat Kohli and R. Ashwin have fond memories of having beaten Australia at the old Motera ground in 2011 in the quarter-final. Lots of talk about the surface, and lots of talk about the surface going into the final as well, Anil?
Yeah, I think when you talk about cricket matches are not without a discussion around the pitch. And whether it is a final, whether it's the first match, whenever India is associated, I'm not really sure why the discussion certainly starts coming towards the pitch, whereas other teams, when you play, whether it is in another country, when host countries sort of play there, nobody even bothers about talking about the surface. So I'm really a bit amused that so much effort and talk is going on around this. But it's generally the people outside of who's involved in that game who are discussing about the surface. And if that filters into the two teams, then that can certainly affect the way they go about playing the match. I mean, we had this conversation even during the semi-final when India played. Nobody really spoke about the other semi-final surface, which was a bit tricky when Australia played South Africa. So, I mean, Ahmedabad, India played Pakistan, Australia played England. Yes, this surface hasn't really produced the 300 plus, but it certainly produced some good cricket. That's what you want to see. So, yeah, I think it'll be a good surface. It'll be a good batting surface. It'll be on the slower side. We know that Ahmedabad has been that way throughout this tournament. I don't see it any different.
What's the treatment of the coverage, Tom, from your part of the world in terms of how much is being said about the pitch? It seems like it's more under the spotlight with Pat Cummins having a look at it, or it being circulated on social media and all sorts of chat about whether India will prepare a turner. What have you been hearing?
Well, the noise over here is been slightly different in that, it's felt that the surface has been tailored in favour of the Indian side. But then again, you're going to have that bias of press here in Australia, and with the picture that's being shown now, Pat Cummins was, quite animated around the pitch. I believe he took photos of the pitch as well. And where he's pointing there is what's been a discussion point here in Australia, and that is at each end, the pitch seems particularly dry and bare, which you would think Kuldeep and Jadeja would welcome. So, look, you can read into it as much as you want. It's both teams have got to deal with it. There's no reason why Australia can't bowl as well in those conditions as what India does. And I think, as Anil says, as soon as you start getting distracted with things that are out of your control, you're starting behind the game. So I think Australia will be, put in a better position if they just leave those worries behind and just concentrate on the very next ball they're playing.
We've seen that with the visiting team. Sometimes the pitch gets into the head and it's not actually as bad when the game starts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 50-over game. Let's be honest. It's not going to really change that much. The only thing that can certainly affect in a 50-over game is the dew, and that's something that will certainly affect the team, which is sort of bowling second. So I don't think the surface is going to change much in 100 overs. If at all, it may. It's not like it's suddenly going to start turning by second half. It's not that way at all. So I think too much of focus, especially in cricket matches, especially in India, certainly comes towards the pitch, which is, I think, unnecessary.
Yep. In a few moments from now, though, we will know about the result of the toss of the final. Anil Kumble did say in our recorded preview to this game he doesn't see it as such a significant advantage to either team, whether they bat first or second. We have seen a predisposition of teams chasing actually doing better at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad in this particular edition, starting with the opening game between England and New Zealand, where New Zealand gunned down a chase of 283. India then made light work of Pakistan, but they were in the game for a large part of the first innings. It just was a glorious collapse then from Babar Azam's side. The Australia-England game, who knows, on another day if Adam Zampa doesn't get a few crucial runs and England have a little more swagger about them, then maybe 286 was chaseable, but Australia did well to defend those by 33. And the South Africa chase against Afghanistan too wasn't without its moments after South Africa looked to recover from that heavy defeat to India. But it is, on paper still, 3 wins to the chasing side, right? Now, India's road to the World Cup final has, it seems easy with the results column, but they've had their share of challenges. Yash Shah is our man at the Narendra Modi Stadium, making sure he's keeping a close eye on the team, and he now builds up his road to India's final.
Unbeaten, unblemished, but not untested. It's easy to look past it, given the extent of India's dominance over the past 6.5 weeks. But this perfect 10 coming into the World Cup final has not come without its challenges. 10 minutes into their first go with the bat, things appeared to be so shaky. The target may have only been 200, but Australia had India at 2 for 3, and who knows what might have happened had Mitchell Marsh not shelled Virat Kohli early on. Eventually though, Kohli and KL Rahul got the job done in Chennai. 6 days later, 2 hours into proceedings right here in Ahmedabad, Pakistan seemed to be cruising at 155 for 2 in the 30th over. But that's when India's bowlers turned on the heat at Motera. And while we may now say that they never looked back, that would be ignoring the poignancy of the events from the 9th over from Pune 5 days later. Hardik Pandya went off injured against Bangladesh, never to return in the competition. And that meant the balance India wanted to go in with for this World Cup had to be altered for good. Enter Mohammad Shami. 5 for 54 at the first time of asking. It wouldn't even be his best figures against this opposition in this tournament. But remember, New Zealand were 243 for 4 with 34 balls to go in Dharamsala. 34 balls through which India only let them score another 30 runs. And given that the chase went to 48 overs, you know how significant that proved out to be. One Sunday later, England would have sniffed a rare win when they held India down to 229 in Lucknow. But by this point, the bowlers had come to the party and they made life easy and India coasted home. Then came demolition jobs of Sri Lanka and South Africa and a cruising win over Netherlands to make it 9 out of 9 to enter the knockouts. The semi-finals, when you look back at it through a scorecard, will show one picture because India scored nearly 400 and won by 70 runs. But for a brief period, while Daryl Mitchell was blazing away, Wankhede was hushed. New Zealand, remember, were 219 for 2 at the end of the 32nd over. That is India's road to get to here. Perfect 10 done. Can they find 11th heaven in Ahmedabad?
Many thanks to Yash for just recapping what's been a compelling tournament, a great tournament, well attended. In keeping with that, 130,000 odd will now watch the toss go up for the first time at the Narendra Modi Stadium in a World Cup final. And we will wait for a few moments to get confirmation of that. Very quickly before that toss though, visuals that we're getting of the team's training. And we're thinking, oh, if it is a turner or one that may turn, should Ashwin come in? Now, would you be tempted with that?
Yeah, I think this Indian team is sort of well-oiled. So even if Ashwin comes in for someone like a Siraj, then it shouldn't really be too much of a problem to manage the resources because Ashwin would certainly bowl first up to the two left-handers. But I don't see that happening unless it's pretty obvious from the surface that you would want an Ashwin to come in because Ashwin is someone who's done exceptionally well also against Australia.
I also saw Marcus Stoinis train with great intensity, Tom. Tell me what that means.
Well, maybe it's sending a bit of a curveball to the Indian team in warm-ups. Quite often you see that sort of byplay before a toss where you sort of try to throw confusion across the other side of the pitch to what the playing 11 is going to be. I'd be surprised if Australia change their 11 from the semi-final. We know that Smith and Marnus Labuschagne have been short of runs, but really this is the time for both those world-class players to step up and to be counted because there's going to be some tough batting in those middle overs.
Okay, the toss has taken place at Ahmedabad. Pat Cummins and Australia have won it and Australia will bowl first. So let's get a quick reaction on that. We showed you that graphic a little while back. 3 out of 4 to the team chasing at the Narendra Modi Stadium in this particular World Cup. India batting first. Anil Kumble, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Australia perhaps think that there's going to be some due first up, put pressure on the Indian batting lineup, what's a good score. All these thoughts may have taken, probably that was the thinking behind Australia winning the toss and bowling first because chasing wise, Australia have certainly made a very interesting game whenever they've chased, at least in the last couple of games that they have played. So yes, in that sense, I'm a bit surprised. But India, I think will be comfortable, in terms of batting first. They've been batting first for the last 6 games. I think it's a good toss to lose because it takes the decision making out of you and just starts focusing on what you need to do as a team. Because sometimes when things don't start well, you start thinking, or the whole sort of discussion comes back to why did you do this at the toss? So that's something sometimes good when that is taken away from you, especially in a final.
Tom, your thoughts on this? We'll also just look at an unchanged Australian team. So that curveball that you said was exactly that. But this clearly was the plan they came into this with, in spite of those slightly tricky chases that Anil mentions. It wasn't easy against South Africa. It wasn't easy against Afghanistan. But this is an Australian team that still boasts of 5 players that played in the 2015 World Cup final. David Warner was there, Steve Smith, Glenn Maxwell and Stark and Hazelwood all know what it is to win a Cricket World Cup. And they're bowling first, Tom. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they certainly do know what it takes to win a World Cup, and I quite like the idea that we are bowling first. I think that number one, in a big final, being all out there together, putting pressure on the home team. India have played a specific brand in this World Cup. It's been thrilling to watch. They've had a tempo that's been really unmatched with any other team. But in a final with 130,000 people watching and over 1 billion people watching around the globe, whether it be through this platform on Cricinfo or anywhere else, they will, they'll be watching every move. So there's a huge amount of pressure on this Indian team. How this pitch is going to play, what is a competitive total, all those questions the Indians will have to work out in that first 10 to 15 overs. So if Australia can, make some inroads in that first phase of the game and throw a couple of early punches, then suddenly, that sort of confidence and all those run of wins leading into today mean absolutely nothing.
All right, there you go. It all counts for very little. India need to finish the arc, right? They need to complete the arc of being this dominant in a World Cup, something we've not seen from the Indian team in a men's World Cup before, not to this scale certainly. But let's just now talk tactics. It's a delicious discussion when it comes to World Cup final with the way Rohit Sharma has set up and with what Australia seamers are likely to throw at him. Well, Rohit's got a good record against Australia, just in case it needed any reminding. His double hundreds, the early part of the beast of a batter that Rohit Sharma became at the top of the order, a lot of that success was enjoyed against Australia, an average of just over 58 and a best of 209. And he got a first bowler against Hazelwood, which makes this even more interesting because Hazelwood seems the kind of bowler, Anil, who can trouble Rohit Sharma. How do you see this going and what are tactical plans for both?
Yeah, I think Rohit will certainly come out the way he's come out throughout this tournament, come aggressive, take on the bowlers. It's not going to be any different. India is setting a target, so obviously Rohit will want to dictate terms at the start. Hazelwood is the obvious choice. Stark because of the swing that he may get, but how much swing you're going to get. But I think if I was in the Australian camp and if you wanted to throw a curveball at someone like a Rohit, look at Adam Zampa. And
with the new ball?
Not necessarily the first over. Maybe early on. I mean, the reason that perhaps Australia struggled in that Chennai game was because they held on to Adam Zampa for a long period of time. He's been in good form. Yes, he's been under pressure against South Africa. Possibly the expectations on Zampa certainly was overbearing. And that's one of the reasons why South Africa batters certainly got better of Zampa. Maybe that's one of the reasons why Australia is looking to field first as well, because they believe that the bowling attack isn't their strength. Their batting is with the kind of experience that they have. So they're looking at putting pressure on the Indian batting lineup. So maybe why not try Zampa, because there's nothing wrong. You throw the ball and say, listen, try and see what happens.
Fascinating. Tom, give me your response to that. Is it a thing you would entertain in a World Cup final? Give Adam Zampa the ball in, say, the first 5 or 6 overs?
Yeah, look, I'd keep an open mind to that. I totally agree with Anil about the fact that when these two teams met in Chennai, Zampa came into the contest far too late in helpful conditions. And we've seen the impact that Zampa's had throughout this World Cup. Second leading wicket taker, the leading wicket taker out of all the spinners of this tournament. So he is a class bowler, and it's not just by coincidence that he's got those numbers in this World Cup. He's done it regularly over the past 4 years for Australia. It is an option if you're looking to change the pace of the game. If Australia go for spin in the first 10 overs, I would definitely throw the ball to Zampa ahead of Maxwell. Maxwell still bowled well, but I just think you need to at times just uplift your champions. And Zampa is one of Australia's quietly unsung heroes. He is a champion. He's delivered in World Cups, whether it be in T20 World Cups or 50 over World Cups. By giving him that opportunity to shine early, you're nearly putting him under the spotlight and on the stage and more often than not, those type of top players embrace those opportunities.
Well, he's also been very good against right-handers, and India have plenty of them. There's no left-handed to Ravindra Jadeja. As we just look at Adam Zampa's World Cup, especially how he's picked up his wickets, and you could see that an average of 15.8 and 17 of his 22 wickets that make him, as Tom Moody said, the leading wicket taker among spinners in this World Cup, have come against right-handed batters. So he should enjoy himself after what was an understandable rare off day in the semi-final at the Eden Gardens, Anil?
Yeah, it was. I think, again, like I mentioned, perhaps the weight of expectations got the better of him. And, of course, David Miller batted really well against Zampa and Klaasen. So it's if you're someone who sort of gets that kind of a pressure built up, especially in big games like this, you're better off bowling first. And I'm sure he will relish the opportunity to go there and bowl. Of course, Indian batting lineup has been extremely dominating. So if Rohit does what he's been able to do, Shubman Gill has been outstanding in the last few games. If they get off to a great start, then there'll be even more pressure against Zampa to rein in these Indian batters.
Assuming, of course, that they stick to their seamers, which we expect to be the expected course of action. We just have a look at the Australian seamers, and as it turns out, we were talking about their lack of power play wickets in the last game in the semi-final, and that's when they perhaps settled that to a large degree. Hazelwood was excellent, did not come back to complete his 10 overs, but between Stark and Hazelwood, they dealt some severe early blows, and after that, the semi-final just seemed too difficult for South Africa. It's still been a toughish tournament for both Stark and Cummins. Now, I guess you're expecting Rohit Sharma, if he sees that there's not a lot of swing, Tom, to start using his feet, play the big shots, high-risk game that he's done so brilliantly in this World Cup. So what are you planning as a bowling team then with those bowlers if he starts like that?
I think whether it swings or not, we're going to see Rohit Sharma doing everything in his powers to, put his footprint or thumbprint on this game, because that's the way he's gone about it, and that's been one of the thrilling things about how he's given such a good launching pad for the likes of Virat Kohli and others in the batting order. I would expect Hazelwood to do what Hazelwood does, and that is smash that 7 to 8 metre length and do it consistently, and just challenge the outside edge and the inside edge of the right-handers with that new ball. I would hope Stark fights fire with fire. I said that in the pre-match show leading into this. I think the only way to deal with Rohit Sharma is not, sit back and wait for him to make a mistake. You go hard as what he's coming at you, you come back even harder. So I'd like Stark to very much have that approach, look to pitch it up and swing it and try to hit him in the pads early. Don't be afraid to let him know the short ball's not too far around the corner, and pretty much the same with Pat Cummins. I think that if, at the end of the day, if we sit back in the game, this Indian batting order is far too strong. They'll just take the game away from Australia.
I'd love to get into a deeper chat with both of you on Rohit Sharma as we just look at him as the second leading run scorer for India in this World Cup. It's not just that he's giving starts, it's that he's still over 500 runs in the tournament at a strike rate of 124. It's quite staggering that India is the only team whose top 5 have all scored in excess of 350 runs here, and that's in spite of Shubman Gill playing in just the 8 innings, and he's the only one who's not got 100 in that list in the last column, but he's still averaging 50 and a strike rate of over 108. As we come back to Rohit though, I'm curious to know what you attribute the success of what is a high-risk game for Rohit Sharma. Why is he able to get away or execute a quick fire 40, 50, 60 and not say other batters? What's he doing about his game?
I think his skill. He is extremely skillful. He plays the ball late and he just picks up the length very early. And that's been his hallmark in terms of the way he's gone about. We saw that even as a young Rohit Sharma coming onto the scene in domestic cricket or in the IPL, way back in 2009, 2010 when he first came in. He had plenty of time. And now, in terms of his understanding of conditions, bowling, and then knowing what exactly to do against which bowler and what you can take on is something that he's understood really well. And we also saw a different Rohit Sharma play against England. So that's the quality of the player that you have and he has that ability to assess the conditions and know that, okay, this is the bowler that I need to target on this surface.
Yeah, Tom?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with the fact that he along with Rahul Dravid, have come up with a philosophy how they're going to be World Cup champions, and that is to have this aggressive brand, back their depth of quality in their batting, and he is totally bought into that philosophy. Pretty much, I'd imagine that's partly his philosophy, how he wants this Indian team to play, and he's walking the talk. He is showing true leadership by not only saying to the team, this is the brand of cricket we want to play. He is out there, and he's got first chance of doing it. He's opening the batting, so he's got the first chance to set the tone to how he expects everyone else to go out there and bat. I remember watching the last game India played in the semi-final, and Rohit Sharma had got out after a blistering innings, and he was quite animated on the sidelines around the tempo of the game during different phases. And I just was reading between the lines. A lot of that was to do with, I felt that he felt maybe the tempo had dropped back a gear, where he wants them to continue to drive into the innings in a high tempo constantly. So he's got this team playing at a level that probably deserves to be more on a Formula One track than anything else.
Yeah, I do remember the phase you're talking about between, I think, overs 37 to 41, where India were going at 5 and over, and they still had 7 wickets or so in hand. So I remember that period. Yes,
no, just to add to that, I mean, if you look at the 3 World Cup, this is the 3rd one. If you look at the 2 previous World Cups that have happened in the subcontinent in the recent past, I mean, 1996, 2011, both those World Cups were dominated by teams which had strong opening partnerships in terms of their aggressive intent that they went about with. Jayasurya, Kalavitarna, then in 2011, Virendra Sehwag and Sachin Tendulkar. So I'm sure Rohit would have thought through that and said, okay, in 2011, I know the rules of the 50-over format itself has come about a bit of changes from 96 to 2011 and from 2011 to 2023. But I'm sure they would have sort of sat down and said, okay, this is the approach that you need. You need to take on and dictate that first 10 overs or 15 overs in the innings for you to set the tone. And then, of course, you have the batting lineup to sort of go through that 50-over period. And that's exactly what Rohit and Shubman Gill, both of them have complemented each other to get the start that India wants.
Yeah, I mean, this is extraordinary numbers. To just make you understand that in a simple context, India are right up there when it comes to all the key numbers in the batting power play. When they get their starts, their power play run rate is higher than any other team. Their average for their batters and their runs is higher than any other team. They've had the most 50-plus stands, and they've also they also lost some wickets to spin, but the average against spin is also the highest. So there you have it. It's just such a strong team in all phases of the game. So that is something for you to consider. I go back to the 2015 final, Tom, and it was fascinating that New Zealand were riding on perhaps a similar impact that Brendan McCullum had on the rest of the team as captain, as a top order batter, and yet at times when you felt, is Brendan McCullum being reckless, and then he gets cleaned up by Mitchell Starc, which effectively is the most the image that we remember from the 2015 final. It just set the tone for Australia after that. What's the difference between McCullum of 2015 and Rohit of 2023?
I think very, very little, really. They're inspirational leaders, tactically both very good. Rohit Sharma has clearly got the dressing room in the palm of his hand, which is exactly what you want your captain to have. He seems to have a huge amount of confidence in his bowling unit. You only have to look back into this World Cup and look at the struggles that Mohammad Siraj had in the early parts, but he trusted Mohammad Siraj, and if anything, sort of invited him back into form by bowling him in different phases and trusting him in different phases, and he then found his rhythm. He picked up some wickets, therefore he gained his confidence. So that's the art of great captaincy. That's the art of leadership, is lifting others, and particularly lifting those that are around you that are slightly offbeat, and he's done that very cleverly. And that happens, like that McCullum ball that Starc got. That's just a good ball. It may well happen today that, whether it be Rohit Sharma or Virat Kohli, they may get a good one early and nick off. But what this Indian team has shown, And that was very evident when they played Australia, when Australia had them, 2 or 3 down for next to nothing. They had the ability to bounce back because they've got the depth and they've got the trust in what they've got coming in after those early losses.
Right, well, very interesting. I wonder if Rohit, after stepping out and swinging and missing one, will do it the second time, because that's what happened in 2015 when he got cleaned up, Brendan McCullum.
Yeah, Rohit will certainly assess the conditions and then bat the way he needs to. And what is critical is that his understanding of what's a good score to defend, which we all thought against England that we were slightly short. When we are sitting here and watching India go about, we all felt India were slightly short. But they figured out that, look, this was good enough on that surface. So, yes, that is something that I'm sure the messaging and the communication right throughout this competition has been excellent. Not just amongst the players in the group, not just the body language that they have shown on the field, but also the communication on the field when they are fielding, plus when the 2 batters are there and then communicating back to the dressing room.
Did I mention that India are unchanged? I can't remember now with the 2 of you.
No.
No, I didn't.
No, you did.
So because it doesn't need to be said.
It's pretty
It doesn't need to be said. India unchanged. There you go. And this is so unique because a lot of the challenges for Indian cricket has been around selection at the key moments or the business end of a World Cup. And that this team is the exact same team that we expected. There was some chit-chat of Ashwin on what could be a surface which turns. Ashwin did play strategically against the Australians in the opening game at Chennai, where they had the one additional left-hander in Alex Carey, but there was no going back to Ashwin right now. Let me just get a quick comment on that. Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. I think, if at all you need an off-spinner, the skipper's there.
Enough said. I won't go into that
just
any further.
on
Yes,
that,
Tom, please.
Just on that, Raunak, I think this playing 11 would look very differently if Hardik Pandya was fit. I think that if he was fit, there's no doubt Ashwin would have played today, purely on the basis that they have still got the 3 quicks and then they've got the 3 very different spin bowling options on a dry surface.
Yeah, it's just interesting that at that they started the tournament with Siraj and Bumrah as their number 1 and 2 seamers, and perhaps that pecking order has changed. That only happened as a result of the Hardik Pandya injury, but we've covered that. What we shall cover one more time is why the India-Australia rivalry is so unique, and Shashank Kishore is among our many fine writers and reporters at Ahmedabad, and he and Yash Jha have just put together why Australia is a team that could very well upset India.
For 12 years, Australia had held the firmest grip on the ODI World Cup. From 99 to 2011, they just didn't lose. At this venue, it was called something else back then. That legacy had finally ended when India beat them in the 2011 quarterfinal, which everyone remembers for Yuvraj Singh's heroics. Here they are 12 years later, and Shashank, it is a chance for them to re-establish a legacy in a way.
Yes, a legacy of a different kind. If you look at the last couple of years, 2021, they won the T20 World Cup when no one expected them to in Dubai. They won a test series in Pakistan. They leveled the test series in Sri Lanka. They won a test match in India. They won the WTC final. And on the back of that WTC win, they also retained the Ashes 2-0 up. I mean, you expected them to win the Ashes wholeheartedly. From there on, they didn't, but they still retained the Ashes. So it's a massive wave of confidence that this team is riding on. Sometimes they don't get the kind of recognition over the last couple of years that they should, but well, you can't write them off. It's a big game. They know how to play big games, and here we go.
Yeah, that threat only becomes that much bigger every time it's Australia in a knockout game, because it's so well documented that this side just doesn't know how to lose knockout matches at World Cups.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the way they performed in knockout games. I mean, it needs no reiteration at all. Look at the clutch games of the past World Cups. They've only ever lost one World Cup semi-final, and that was in 2019. But just look at the history, 96, 99 against West Indies in Mohali. Absolutely nowhere in the running, and then Shane Warne comes, bowls a dream spell to win them. 99, the same script happens in Edgbaston, South Africa. I mean, we don't need to talk about that. 2003-07, of course, they went through undefeated, but 2015 against India, again on an unbeaten run, they meet them in Sydney. Steve Smith rises to the occasion, Aaron Finch rises to the occasion. So this team knows what it takes to win big games.
Yeah, and I guess if you are looking at further positives, you look at India, the way they tend to dominate at home, The only ODI series they've lost in India since 2016, they've lost 2. Both have been to this side, one of them earlier this year. They tend to find a way.
Yeah, they tend to find a way, and they tend to find players for these conditions. I mean, you talk about how each team kind of plays to strengths in their own conditions, but Australia, this team, has got players who are versatile and who are able to challenge teams across different conditions. You saw Ashton Turner coming in, winning a game from nowhere to turn around that series. Earlier this year when they played, Mitchell Starc used some of those pitches to his advantage to bring reverse swing into picture. So they've found players out of nowhere to come and turn games, and it's just the pedigree of the team that's speaking really. So if any team can come up and challenge India, it is this Australian team.
Back in 2003, the roles were reversed. Australia had won 10 in a row, India had won 8 in a row after having lost to Australia initially. India couldn't stop Australia then. Can Australia stop India now?
Many thanks to Yash and Shashank at the Narendra Modi Stadium, where just a few seconds back, the anthems have just concluded in Ahmedabad, and one can only imagine what that atmosphere would have been like with a capacity crowd already there from the toss. It's not like they're going to come in as the day goes on. We've seen previous games. This is a World Cup final, and we've got glimpses of some great shots. You think what an atmosphere it must be, Anil, and what an intimidating factor it may be for an opposition, and yet it seemed like the Australians weren't intimidated from just the images.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a great atmosphere to be a part of a World Cup final, and if you have 130,000 people there, and especially during the national anthem, you have all of them singing the Indian national anthem, and you can imagine the atmosphere there. Yes, the Australian side may not look intimidated, but certainly this Indian team doesn't, really worry too much about the Aussies in terms of the way the Aussies of the early 2000, how they were in terms of their intimidation. These two teams have played each other on many occasions, and both teams know each other really well in terms of, I'm sure, yes, the intimidation may not be there. We have spoken about Rohit Sharma, the fast bowlers, Australia, yes, Hazelwood, Zampa, Starc, Cummins. They are concerned. I mean, if Rohit Sharma gets off to a good start,
The intimidation is the other way around.
the other way around.
Yeah.
I mean, Rohit can get a double 100 here. I mean, that's something that he's done consistently in ODIs, and he hasn't had a big 100 in this tournament, and probably it's loading.
Oh, well, okay. Pat Cummins had some interesting things pre-match, though, Tom. We love the chance to silence a big crowd and whatnot. Do you sense this is the right sort of opposition to be able to play the occasion down?
I think they're the usual cliches that he's going to have to go with going into a big game like this. What else can you say? Of course it's going to be a tough one for Australia. 130,000 people, maybe 1,500 of those are going to be Australian fans, and they're going to be completely washed out. But at the end of the day, as Anil know, when you're playing in big games like that, regardless of the size of the crowd, and Australia have played at many big venues with many big crowds before, your focus becomes internal, not external. If your focus is external and worrying about the noise, worrying about the crowd and the reaction of the crowd, you're not really in the contest. What I have said from a coaching perspective to teams that have gone into finals, whether that be domestic finals, IPL finals, or whatever the final might be, this is a celebration. Today for the Australian team, it's a celebration of coming back into the tournament after losing the first 2 games, playing some really good cricket, and today is the celebration of the last month's hard work. So let's just go out there and enjoy it. And I think you'll see an Australian side jumping around that field with smiles on their faces, throwing the ball around, just having the best time of their life, because it is a unique experience.
Yes, absolutely. We saw it made a difference. The energy with which they started the semi-final at the Eden Gardens, it perhaps went a long way in determining the eventual outcome of that game. Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill have walked out in a World Cup final for the first time. As we just get predictions from Anil, Kumble and Tom Moody before we wrap things up, Shubman Gill is actually, it looks like he's hitting his straps now. He's not got the 100 as well. He loves Ahmedabad.
Yes.
We know that as well. He's due.
Yeah, he's due. Rohit Sharma is due for a big one. So, yes, I'm looking at perhaps the highest score coming on this surface, 289, was it? the last
Yes,
one.
I think the one between
Yeah,
Australia and
I
England.
think India will get close to 300.
300 for Anil Kumble.
Close to 300.
And you sense
290.
that is a good score for a World Cup
I
final
think so. I think
for
it's
this
a good.
ground.
Yeah, it'll add another 25 runs anyway if
Yeah.
you're defending that. You know, when you're chasing in a World Cup final, that's perhaps 25, 30 more. So that's how you'd like to think. And 290, I think, is a good score.
Yeah. All right. Tom Moody.
I'm thinking 262.
Well. And where does that leave you with who is suddenly favourites in this final, Tom, at 262?
I think 262 is going to be a pass score. So I think the game's going to be very much to the balance in the halfway mark. But Australia chasing will have to bat out of their skins because I think India are going to be tough to face on this surface.
Well, we surely cannot get anything like the last World Cup final. So if we get anywhere close to that, we've had a heck of a game. Tom Moody, Anil Kumble, don't rule out anything because we didn't expect what we saw at Lord's between New Zealand and England. But here come India and Australia and the promise of what is a World Cup final to savour for the ages. So we look forward to your company at the end of the India innings on Maruti Suzuki Arena Presents ESPN Cricket for Matchday, powered by Qatar Airways. Do download the mobile app if you haven't already. There's no reason for you to be worried about interruptions or rain, none of that expected in Ahmedabad, but we'll have you covered with, I'm sure, everything you want to know about the World Cup final. We'll see you at the end of the India innings.
Stunning looks, then swift,